The rain was soft that evening, a steady whisper against the cracked windowpane of a small, time-worn house at the edge of a quiet town. The world outside was gray, wrapped in mist, but inside that house, a young woman named Alina sat on the cold wooden floor of her childhood bedroom, her heart heavier than it had ever been. Around her lay open boxes filled with memories she wasn't ready to face, old photographs, worn-out books, and clothes that still smelled faintly of her father's cologne. A week had passed since he was laid to rest, yet the house felt emptier than she ever imagined it could, as if grief had hollowed out the very air she breathed. Alina's fingers, trembling and fragile, reached for a small wooden box tucked beneath her father's sweaters at the back of his closet. She had never seen it before. It was old, the varnish faded, with a rusty clasp that gave way easily under her touch. Inside were neatly folded letters tied with a ribbon that had once been red but had now dulled to brown. Atop the stack lay an envelope with her name written in her father's familiar, careful handwriting. She froze, her breath caught in her throat, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Her father, Arif, had always been a man of few words, a man who expressed love not through grand gestures but through small, quiet acts. He worked long hours at the steel factory, his hands calloused and stained with grease, his clothes smelling of metal and smoke. Yet he never came home empty-handed. There was always a sweet for her, a pencil, a book, a new pair of socks. He never said, "I love you," aloud, but his care was stitched into every moment of their lives. She tore open the envelope with trembling hands, the paper soft and yellowed with age. Her father's words leapt from the page in his tidy script, though his handwriting trembled in places, as if written with a shaking hand. "My dearest Alina," it began, "if you are reading this, I am no longer there to hold your hand when you cry. I am sorry. I am sorry for every time I failed you, for every moment I couldn't be the father you deserved. I am sorry for my silences, for the nights I came home too tired to ask about your day, and for that evening I made you cry and walked away without apologizing. I hope, one day, you can forgive me." Tears pooled in Alina's eyes, her throat tightening as she read. She remembered that evening vividly, the night of their worst fight. She had been 17, angry and restless, desperate to escape their small town and chase dreams that felt too big for the life her father had built. She'd screamed at him, called him controlling, told him she hated him. He had stood there, silent, his face unreadable, and then he had walked out of the room. They never spoke of it again. She turned the page with trembling hands, her tears blurring the ink. "There are things you never knew about me, my little star," the letter continued. "I never wanted to burden you with my struggles, but now you deserve the truth. I was not always strong. I was not always brave. Before you were born, I had dreams of becoming a teacher, but those dreams died when my own father fell ill. I worked 3 jobs to keep our family alive. When I met your mother, she was my reason to keep going. And when she left this world, you became my reason to live." Alina let out a soft sob, clutching the letter close to her chest. She remembered those years after her mother's passing, the suffocating silence in the house, her father's stoic face. She had thought he didn't care, that his silence meant indifference. But now she understood, his quietness was grief. His silence was pain. "I wanted to be different from my father," the letter said. "He was a good man, but he was cold. He never hugged me, never said he loved me. I wanted to change that, but I didn't know how. I thought providing for you would be enough, but now I fear I failed you. You must know this, Alina, you were my light. You saved me more than I ever saved you." The tears streaming down her face blurred the final words of the letter. "My wish for you is simple, my little star. Live boldly, chase your dreams, even the ones that scare you. Love, even when it hurts. Forgive, even when it feels impossible. Please forgive me, Alina. You were, and will always be, my greatest pride." Alina's sobs echoed softly through the empty house. She pressed the letter to her heart, curling around it as if it were her father himself. She thought of all the nights she resented him, the words she never said, the hugs she never gave. Regret washed over her in crushing waves, yet beneath it, a seed of understanding took root. Days turned into weeks, and Alina found herself drawn to the letter every night. She read it over and over until she memorized every word, and slowly, her anger and guilt began to soften. She started visiting the places that held their memories, the park where he used to push her on the swings, the bookstore where he'd buy her novels when she couldn't afford them. In those familiar places, She saw him not as a distant father but as a man who had carried the weight of the world and still made time to love her. One gray afternoon, she stood at his grave, a bouquet of white lilies in her hand. Her voice trembled as she read his letter aloud, her tears falling onto the stone. "I forgive you, Dad," she whispered. "And I hope you can forgive me too." A gentle breeze rustled through the cemetery, and for the first time since his passing, she felt a strange warmth, peace, as if he were standing beside her, smiling softly. Years passed. Alina moved to the city, pursuing her dream of becoming a writer. She framed the letter and hung it above her desk, a constant reminder of her father's love. Her first novel was dedicated to him, a collection of stories inspired by his sacrifices and quiet strength. At her book launch, she shared his letter with the audience, her voice trembling as she spoke. "This letter changed my life," she said. "It taught me that love is not always loud. Sometimes, it's in the silence, in the sacrifices we don't see, in the words left behind when it's too late to speak them." Her story touched thousands of readers. Letters poured in from strangers sharing their own regrets, their own memories of parents they had misunderstood. Alina realized her father's legacy wasn't just his sacrifices but the way his story helped others heal. Years later, on what would have been her father's 70th birthday, she returned to his grave, this time with her young daughter, a bright-eyed girl who clutched her hand tightly. "Say hi to Grandpa," Alina whispered. The little girl waved shyly at the gravestone, her laughter ringing through the quiet cemetery. Alina placed lilies on the grave and stood in silence, her heart full. She had carried her father's lessons forward, breaking the cycle of unspoken love. She hugged her daughter close, whispering, "I love you," every chance she got. And in the soft rustle of the trees, she felt his presence, proud and at peace. Life had come full circle. The pain of loss had transformed into a legacy of love, a love that would live on, generation after generation.